Hey, welcome back. I'm Janelle and this is my blog, A Dash of Flash. First up, I'd like to thank the many people who have viewed my videos during the past week, and some of the comments I've received have been very favourable. Not all of them though, some have been pretty awful, mainly from family and friends. But thank you anyway. It's really nice to know that there are people out there interested in what I do. Today I'm going to be making a card that uses a technique called the Black Magic technique. Now this is a new technique for me. I've only just been learning it and I'd like to share it with you. I'll also be using a sketch from Freshly Made Sketches, number 164. And if I get this completed in time, I'll be able to put it on their blog. I'll be back in a moment. Here is the sketch that I'll be using today. As you can see, it's fairly plain with a panel across the middle. For this I'll be using these. I've got a side fold white card base, which is 15 by 10.5 centimeters. I have some black cardstock there to go on top, and that's going to be 10 by 14.5 centimeters. I'll then be matting these together to go across the middle. And it will be put on like this, and you can see the black cardstock is what I'll be using for the Black Magic technique. So I'll be working on this panel, and I'll be doing some stamping with some masking. Whenever you're doing masking, it's always, I'll just put that there, it's always a good idea to do a little plan. You can see here I've just got a rough plan of how I'm going to position my stamps on my panel. 3 different blooms there with some leaves and some little flowers in between. Now with masking, especially with the ink I'll be using, which is a White Frost colour box pigment ink. With pigment ink it takes a long time to dry, so with masking it will take a while to do, because between each stage of stamping I'll then have to leave it dry before I can mask it, before I can stamp the next layer, otherwise it will smudge and won't look any good. For the masking I'm going to use, of course, Inked Do stamping mask paper, and I've already done this. Here. I've got my 3 blooms stamped already and cut out, so they're ready to put on. Now you would have noticed I stuck my cardstock onto a piece of tape I've got on my work bench here. That's just so that when I'm stamping, the stamp's not going to get suctioned onto the cardstock and get stuck and smear the ink. When you've got a small piece of cardstock, that can be really tricky, and you don't want problems with smudging. For this card I'm also going to be using this stamp kit. It's from Hot Off the Press, and it's called Silhouette Flowers. Flower Silhouettes. Now when you're doing this technique, which is the Black Magic, you do need silhouette stamps, so you're going to have a lot of white being stamped that will then be coloured in with colouring pencils to give a multicoloured effect on the black. It will look quite special when it's finished. And for the colouring, here we are. I'm going to be using the Inktense colouring pencils. Now, even though these are water soluble, they still can be used as colour pencils, and because they're the Inktense ones, I'm going to have a rich, strong colour being used that will contrast lovely with the black on the cardstock. So I'll just set that aside as well. Alright. Well, first of all, I'm going to stamp my single bloom in the middle. Here we are. I've got my Fisker stamp press here. I'll just stick my stamp in the middle. Now, when you've got reasonably new stamp pads, they're going to be quite juicy. So with this technique, I don't want to make my stamps have too much ink on them, otherwise it could smudge. And if I can, I'd like to maintain those lovely little lines between the raised edges on the stamp. Okay, up the top, in the middle, that'll do, and down. Okay, that's not bad. Now, as this dries, the colour of the ink is going to get a little bit darker, so it will become more grey, but that's okay. Now I'm just going to let this dry. I'll get my heat gun to it. You don't need to see that. Okay, so I've got my image totally dry now. I'm going to put the mask on, making sure I cover all areas of it. Now, if you're careful, once you're finished using these masks, you can just put them back onto the backing paper, slide it into the stamp pouch, and you've got it there for next time you use the stamps. Now I'll be stamping again. About there. Now where the stamp meets the mask, you've got like a step down, so you have to be particularly careful in that area that you make contact with the cardstock underneath, otherwise you'll end up with areas that aren't stamped. Hopefully I've done it properly. Yay! And taking my next stamp, I'll stamp on this side, and then I'll make sure that those two stamps are dry. Before masking them as well. Once again, press in the area where the mask is, making contact. You don't want to press so much though that the stamp splotches out the side. A bit like that. But I'll let that dry properly, and then we'll go on to the next bit. Quickly putting on the masks on these two. This one goes here. And this one goes on here. I'll like that. I'm going to stamp up some leaves. Okay, that'll do. It's pretty close to my plan. I'll just let this dry thoroughly, and then the next step is colouring.